I managed to find my way out of the deep underground network of chasms, and I arose to a nice, blooming, beautiful green field, or so I thought. There were structures atop that I could also explore, a small ruined castle which would hopefully house some treasures inside. As I broke in, it was completely derelict, only wolves lived within, but I did find a few useful resources which I could seek from within these walls. Now this is where I ran into some true trouble because I wasn't watching my back as I ran through the woods. I was basically inspecting the new types of species of wildlife which I'd never seen before, and also some items which were just randomly floating in stasis. As I ran through the woods, I saw something quite strange, but I didn't really think twice of it, mainly because I was distracted by these berry bushes and thorns in my side. But from behind, I was attacked by something truly terrifying. The infection had spread. It was time to get to work, build some more tools of the trade which would aid me in the journey, and also some means of defense, as well as smelting some of the precious resources which I had gathered along the way, and make some more furnaces to smelt them a little bit more quicker and improve my workspace. But one thing which was lurking in the background was the looming cover of the darkness of night which was closing in. This would be a problem, but we're not talking just parasites. There's another danger in the world, something just as sinister, maybe less dangerous, but still a problem which would hold over my head. Zombies. But the way in which I set up my fortifications meant that they basically just couldn't touch me. Well, unless they found a way to break down the door. I could slash them through the windows, behead them, and bring a swift end to this terror of the night. I hadn't completed the second floor on the structure just yet, but it was kind of being used as some kind of sniper's nest or a lookout point. I could go up on top on the roof using the ladder, and I could check for potential dangers nearby and kind of have a 360-degree radius of a view around the area in the valley that I was situated in. This was really good to actually prospect to see if the parasitic infection and problem was growing and getting worse or not. Normal zombies seemed to burn in the daylight, but the ones in this forest, they had some kind of toxic dust which would come off them in the daylight instead of burning. This would still wear them down and they'd eventually die, but perhaps this was something to do with the parasite's infection. Maybe they were spreading it in some way. After daytime had arrived and I'd fought off waves of zombies, I discovered a small little settlement just sat there in the woods. This was full of prosperous resources, farms that I could pillage and plunder for different supplies, and people that I could actually trade with. Survivors which I didn't actually know were within this forest. I thought this forest was totally abandoned, but it was nice to see one place was actually completely entirely untouched by not only the parasitic plague which was slowly getting its grip on the valley, but also the zombies hadn't destroyed this place either, which was most likely being protected by iron golems or other similar guards. I basically ransacked the farm and took as many supplies as I could without harming any of the natives here. The next task was to set out to actually obtain some kind of food. I didn't have any long-term food resources or ways of acquiring it to actually keep me from being hungry over long periods of time. That's why I went hunting within the forest with the sword and the other supplies that I had gotten, and I found a huge roost of different turkeys which were residing in here, as well as a lot of deer which were roaming around the woods. This was a good source for food to bring back for the long haul, which I could keep for later if it reached winter time or when the parasitic plague began to spread and would make hunting near impossible. I was still discovering just how diverse the many subsets of species that lived in this forest were. I found a beach with some huge gigantic crabs which I actually slayed for some crab meat. It was time to switch things up a bit, maybe try some seafood, but I had to still be careful because the water around here was severely contaminated. As you could see, it wasn't water anymore, it was toxic waste. This was another key perhaps for the zombie infection, but it didn't give me any clues about where the parasites had come from. This forest was of something of nightmares. I was used to normal giant spiders like tarantulas, but these were like clockwork spiders with clown faces and emitted weird sounds. One morning, the next morning when I went to my roof, I discovered a really strange monstrosity, a strange form harboured outside my base. This was what's called a heavy carrier form. This was a new parasite, one which I had never seen before, one that when you slay it, it releases spores and mini parasitic bugs which infect victims and take them hold as a host. This was the way that this parasitic plague would actually spread more throughout this forest. This was one of the forms which I would have to be heavily wary of and be more careful careful of letting around my base. And because of this new threat and the new different genotypes of these parasites which I was witnessing day by day, this is why I decided to make a platform for my base. Not only for that reason, also just as a pastime so I could actually fish. Like I said before, there wasn't really many food sources unless you went deep into the forest for hunting reasons, so fishing from the water would get me some more food. And as you can see, this particular water was not toxic waste or contaminated, so it was actually fresh water. So as long as the fish themselves were not infected, it was a good way for me to obtain some food. And when I fenced it off and put gates on it, it'd also trap enemies from actually coming onto the platform. Security was always a main focus and a big concern when constructing this base, but for some reason, some of these parasitic bugs managed to find themselves an entry point to get inside the base. They just appeared out of nowhere. Maybe they came underneath the door in a small crack and started to infest the base. This was the first time I actually saw the real parasitic forms that would infect the host, which had probably been dispersed by that carrier form which I destroyed nights before. It was also on the exact same day as I was exploring the forest that I kind of got hit hard by a truth bomb. It was the first time which I actually witnessed a real human being infected by the parasites, a monstrosity with multiple appendages and limbs, and a true horror. Of course, I had to slay the beast. The horrible truth was that multiple of these were actually infested within these woods surrounding my base. I just had no clue where, and soon it would spread to similar animals and mammals and create a huge problem. And why was I going on another hunting mission to obtain some food and slaying these pigs? It was actually to purge them, because some of these pigs had been infected by buglins. Yep, buglins is the name for these horrible little worm-like endermites which infest the victims and turn them into something of a nightmare. This was my clue now that it was spreading to other animals, not just humans, and the parasite creatures themselves weren't the only natural things. Now the Mother Nature created creatures were actually being completely changed and twisted. And it wasn't just one, the pigs in this forest had been completely mutated and taken over. It started to become a daily occurrence as the time would go by. I would see just faint, distant figures and I would have to go explore them up close, and I would find that they were humans which had been infected and infested. But I had never seen so many of these adventurers in my life. Perhaps there were more people in this forest, perhaps they had just gone missing and been infected with this parasitic form. I decided it was time to expand the base and make some base renovations. This began by just constructing the foundation for a brand new tower. This would serve as a watchtower and kind of like a mini fortress which would connect to my base, a place which I could run to if the building became under attack. If a horde would form out of a group of different zombies, or maybe even parasites if it got out of hand, I could run to this place and it would provide additional protection and fortification that the normal base made out of wood couldn't offer or provide. It was this day which I would gain a lesson of karma. Maybe I would learn something new, because as I was hunting I got basically lunged at by a giant moose. Don't mess with a moose. Night was falling, but I discovered a brand new desert biome, but I was attacked. These were coyotes. They hunted and they were ravenous, and they were in packs, and oh boy, they were dangerous. Yeah, another lesson I learned was don't attack geese and don't attack ducks, and definitely don't attack either of them if they're in a group, because they will tear you to shreds with their beaks, and they definitely protect their family. I must have found some kind of cryptid or mythical beast of some sort, because this bird sounded truly demonic. Tell me if you think this is what a normal bird should sound like, because I'm pretty sure I haven't heard any eagles or mountain birds sound like a demon. It was really strange because I went quite a long time without witnessing any kind of parasitic presence. Sure, at night time there would be the standard zombie invasions, but I would find that the most dangerous thing were basically the natural creatures in the forest, like boars, crazy geese, and those mooses.